Hello, welcome back. Today, the spotlight is on Wrath of the Righteous, a adventure path from Paizo, the only one so far within the Pathfinder world, which allows you to go from character level 1 all the way through 20. All the other APs so far have been able to get you up to 16th, 17th level, and this one takes you all the way to 20, but not only that, with the Mythic Adventures core rules, you can gain 10 mythic tiers on top of your 20th level. So, a lot of the Paizo forums, they ask for what epic games are out there. Where can I start something where I get to fight these incredible monsters that I can never even seem to get to because I can't get high enough in a level because the game ends or the GM's moved on or we've chosen a different game or my character's died and all this stuff. And how do I get to fight something that's a CR 24 or how do I get to fight something that's a CR 28 or 30? So, Mythic Adventures will definitely help you out. It's something that's added into the Wrath of the Righteous AP. It's actually built right into it. So to play it would be to learn how to interpret the rules provided from Mythic Adventures. It's a huge book, similar to the core rulebook, and it features what it is to be mythic or epic, where you get to gain, instead of levels, you get to gain these tiers. And at these tiers, you get certain abilities that you can do. And you don't get experience for those, you just, they're given to you at story sequences within the adventure path. There's a certain time and moment where you increase in your mythic ability, your reserves of mythic power. And what is mythic? Well, to kind of describe that would be to read a little part in here. Is to be mythic means to draw upon a power that few even dare to understand and even fewer hope to wield. An air of destiny surrounds mythic characters, and each choice they make shapes the world at large. Mythic characters are more resilient and powerful than others, and as a result are awe-inspiring in ways their non-mythic counterparts could never match. Other adventurers might balk at taking on a dragon that plagues a village, but mythic heroes would not only take on the dragon, but also clear the entire region of any and all threats. And you can do amazing acts of mythic proportions using mythic adventures. They have spells that are more powerful. They inspire the players in your group. You can do amazing acts of epic destruction, creation, all that kind of stuff. Mythic feats, more powerful versions of the feats you've come across before. Magic items. Also, mythic monsters. Let's say you don't have to fight a CR 20, a CR 25, CR whatever. You can just take on that CR 4, but maybe it's CR 4 with a mythic rank of like 5 or something, or 3. And they have these unique powers where they may get to go twice in the initiative order. Every time you damage them, they spray blood with acid. They may have damage reduction of mythic on there, where you need a +6 weapon or better to shear through their little buffer there. Even mythic feats and mythic spells, where they may be able to block a critical hit there might be a chance for them to block that. There's a lot of reserves of just tremendous power that can be felt by your players through their characters and what they face. So really you can introduce Mythic at any level. You don't have to wait for 20. But even if you do get all the way up there, you can fight incredible and devastating things and be just as devastating in return, all the while maintaining a balance for it. Now, I can't really talk too much more about Mythic adventures, only because I haven't really had my players get truly involved with it yet. They just began Wrath of the Righteous AP, and you don't really get to experience your first Mythic tier until you get to the end of the book. And then after that, it's game on. But with my Jade Region group, I did make my own Mythic monsters for that. The Mythic Adventures books, or the book. In the back of the book, there's a thing on how to rebuild your monster, or to apply a Mythic template. So I did a couple of those as a test to see, because you non-Mythic characters can fight Mythic creatures. The CR just goes up just a little bit, maybe by 2 points or so, versus what their normal non-Mythic bestiary stats would look like. So I've had that. I've run a couple of those where I made a couple, and it went pretty well. Of course, it was challenging. It was tough as hell. I even made it more rougher than it should have been, but it gave them that elated feeling of overcoming that overwhelming, seemingly unstoppable force. I was able to achieve that with my group. It's just another notch on their belt as far as reliving what amazing things that they have accomplished as a group as well. So, Mythic Adventures, you can introduce that to any of your games. It just requires, reading up on some of it to understand it. It's not that difficult. There's not a whole lot you really need to know, other than it just, a lot of it takes a lot of the stuff that you have already and increases the power tenfold, and gives your players that needed feeling of being truly epic, of everything they do, is a devastation to their enemies and the way they shape the world. And getting back to Wrath of the Righteous, you can use those. To talk about the AP though, I got 1 through 3 so far. Book 4 will be out soon, out of a 6-book set there. And I'm currently playing Jade Regent as a GM with my group, and I saw Mythic Adventures, and I was like, I don't know. I saw Wrath of the Righteous AP, and it's kind of like good versus evil. I kind of experienced a lot of that with Forgotten Realms, where there is an epic feel to it, and there's this good versus evil thing always going on there, and all inspiring events and cataclysmic changes and such. And I know a lot of GMs out there, I've read about it and heard from some of them about how, that this mythic thing won't last, and they're just going to stay away from it. They don't even know what it's about, but they just want to stay away from it just because, they're easily intimidated by something new or a new rule set. Maybe they've been put off by a lot of the subsystems that Pathfinder put out with the APs. A lot of them didn't work for a lot of people, namely like the caravan, romance rules, and relationships, and armor as damage reduction, and called shots maybe, I don't know, just a lot of different stuff. A lot of people just like to stick with just the core rule book and not kind of venture out for fear of a balance issue, or maybe it's more of a budget issue. Maybe, you got those players that can't really take too much as far as reading, interpreting, especially what could be considered with newer players and such. But there was a little hesitation felt from this because, just a overwhelming strong good versus evil, and a subsystem that is deeply embedded throughout all of the books of the Wrath of the Righteous. Trying to get away from it would be very difficult, given the grand scale of just how much is put into this using those optional rules. But as I just said to you, that I tried out building up the monsters myself and introducing those into Jade Regent as a more powerful version for them to fight, since they do really well for themselves taking down what I throw up against them. So I got to test out some of it. I've yet to test out the or have the players get a feel for it. But when you come across Wrath of the Righteous, it's a hard book to put down. Very hard. It's not just about good versus evil. There are multiple layers of depth with even the side of good, where you get people who have joined this crusade to fight against the overwhelming horde of demons and such. This is a very demon heavy theme. Deals with the Worldwound itself, and very heavy theme. But as far as like the side of good, there's layers to it. There's corruption. There's political schemes. There's people who sign up for the crusade that just had a sight for just fame and fortune, kind of overlooking helping others and choosing a moral high ground, sticking to your moral compass and not feed into the temptations that war can bring about. So you get to see a lot of different faces on the side of good, and they can be quite ugly. Not only that, but when you begin this all, it starts in a very climatic, very mythic, ground-shaken way. When I say ground-shaken and such, I might be referring to a Balar cutting off, severing the head of a ancient dragon, silver dragon. The floor falling apart. Your player character is falling through that, and by the good graces of the dragon, resorting to casting a spell at the last moment to sort of break the fall of those desperate adventurers find themselves in a depth of peril. So it starts off very climatic. You're there for a celebration, but it's cut quite short as you are witness to the fall of the city, and right away you are in weakened darkness, and the scene is eerie, it's vague, it's terrifying, and due to the devastation, you start to remember some of the things that happened from that plaza that you were at for that celebration, recalling some of those things that happened before you fell through this rift that opened up, and remembering the dragon's action to bestow a mercy upon you. And not only are you survivors, but there are just a few among you, namely NPCs. And these NPCs are great. There's 3 of them that you find, vastly different from each other, with a incredible story that doesn't have to be told right away. Throughout the first book, they talk about NPC developments, how they react to each other, interact with what you do, and how their story develops as you find yourselves in this underground subterranean layer beneath the city, trying to find a way out to get back up to the surface to help out those desperate in need. You really get to learn about these NPCs, and as a GM, they do a lot of work for you in giving you a great backstory, a great backdrop, as far as giving life to these characters, bringing out their quirks and their personalities, and maybe there are changes with them. You get some insight and maybe some investigation with learning about who they are, maybe some of the sort of grim things that they may say, to some of the racial things they may say as well. You get to react to that, and they react strongly throughout a part of this book. And there's quite a lot of interaction there that's already written out for you. So as a GM, you don't have to worry about that, especially if you're not good with immersion, if you're not good with story and such. But right away, you go with these underground caverns that you get to traverse, and you see some of the devastation from up above, as you see a crusader who's been, trapped in the rubble, clearly dead, but you find some very needed gear there, a few valued possessions that may help you. But you also come upon the sort of abandoned environment around you, a time that the city forgot. Speaking of like first descendants and such, you get to come across those. There's some lore there. There's some unique monsters that you get to come across. People who perhaps have fled the surface and came down here to live for many years at a time. Really, there's a lot of things presented here where you can determine whether certain factions and such are a threat or not to you, and make the call whether you would align with them or oppose them. But it's not just as good and evil. There's a lot of layers to both sides. There's an option to redeem people who are evil or people who are good. It may have some mixes in between. This adventure path is a huge showcase for the paladin. You come across a lot of powerful stuff right away, and I would say a paladin is something you definitely want to have. As a GM, you should suggest it. Maybe for someone who's new to the game, paladin would be a great choice for them to kind of be involved. They'll be in the spotlight, and they'll bring about a really great experience for their first time. But this adventure path alone, just book 1, takes you from level 1 all the way up to level 6. I think the other ones you get up to, 3rd or 4th, so this one takes you all the way to 6. So you can see there's quite a advancement in the levels. And as you go through, you meet different things, different people. There's some challenge to it, since some of the NPCs are hurt, and you have to help them out. This is meant to be a very good sort of a group. Somewhere with lawful good, chaotic good, and such would help. Neutral, you can, have that emerging character, find its own path with the group. I would disband any thoughts of having evil characters. But the Paladin would definitely shine. The Cavalier would. Tieflings and Witches, you would have some degree of maybe in the very beginning, as far as people having a disdain for you. Tieflings may be sort of looked at as demon kind and such. Even if they are proving themselves, there's some of that racial intolerance there. But you will see a lot of tieflings that are paladins and such that fight on the side of good there. Of course, there's, that hardship that they have to endure. As far as witches and such, they may be seen as, worshiping demons and crap, but it just depends if the GM's gonna, apply a lot of that onto those characters. Otherwise, it can be overlooked. But yeah, there's sort of a mini little dungeon here, or underground rooms and such. There's cultists, there's a unique story that unfolds, whether they pick up on some of the clues and rumors or not. But you finally get to go back up to the surface and go through the devastated city, and they give you a lot of different encounter tables that you can go with as far as what they encounter along the way, and then they get to see the unfolding events as the city changes, as it goes into a slow state of decay. You see the disparaging sort of citizens. You see the harsh light shed upon the forces of good, namely paladins and such. You get to see, whether there's good in their hearts or not, and you get to see that some are not there as what was intended for the crusade. Their thoughts and their ambitions lie elsewhere, and you see a degree of violence where the lines blur as far as paladins and demons almost seemingly on the sort of same path. You get to look upon certain devastations there, and there's more NPC reactions there. They do a really good job with the NPCs. As far as even giving you suggestions on how they could help in battle, even with a debilitating skill set due to whatever damage they took in that fall in the very beginning. So it's a very explosive start, and it just keeps going all the way through. Even just having a god take notice of you, that becomes apparent here as well, as there are some ways to earn points of devotion for the characters. So already there's a lot of different forces that make their presence known and really bring about the mythic proportions of it. And it's not just your common stock of demons that you get to fight. There's a campaign set in the Worldwound, which gives a lot of different types, new types as well. And they even list those in the book. You have to, you can get that and have those fight the party. They even list the stats for some of those. They use things all the way up to Bestiary 3. And towards the end, there's quite a lot of tough fights, but the rewards are vast. I was quite taken back by one particular item that the group will come across quite soon, and it's one of those ones you just sort of have a curious grin to, as to just seeing how powerful the game will become with players and monsters alike. The epicness, the mythicness will be felt by all, and there's just a lot of great magic items here. There's a lot of great lore to the city itself, to the factions that reside within the city and throughout the region. So the campaign set in the Worldwound will definitely help you with that, especially for adventures that go beyond the city, in which the other books there will be. And what I really like about this is the campaign traits that you get to select for your player character select. They actually get to resolve those. It's not just part of their character's past, but it even goes so far as to resolve those in the future books. Maybe book 3 or book 4. They'll actually resolve themselves, and there'll be a sense of clarity and a finality to it. That'll be refreshing for the players and bring about closure as well, which usually in the past with other APs you just get sort of it's just part of your background, but now this is more of a thought that is planted behind and before them as well. So there's some great factions such as the Crusaders, the Blackfire Adepts, the Rift Wardens. But yeah, I was quite pleased with this, and because of that, because of Mythic Adventures and the mythicness of the books, I kind of wanted to turn away from it in the beginning, but it's hard to resist. Mythic Adventures, when you look at it, it's hard to resist. Wanting to use it, wanting your players to, enjoy it. It's just one of those ones that you really can't put down, and I had my guy start it kind of right around when book 3 was just about to come out. I mean, that's kind of a fool's choice there, deciding to start something when you really don't know how it's all going to work out. If, there's going to be a couple books that just suck. But it's so good. I read up to, book 3. There's no lull. There's no point where it just kind of drops. And really, it can't, because Mythic Adventures is embedded into it, and the stakes are always high. I've heard that Reign of Winter is pretty hard as far as the challenges with the monster encounters that are put before them, but I know this will be quite a challenge as well because of the mythicness, where you have that supreme might through blade or spell. So, and that goes for both sides. And what happens if you're like me and you already have another game that your group is doing, and the tide of Mythic washes over you, and you can feel that pressure, it's just building, and then finally you get swept away in it, and your players in your group reach out a hand to grab you and try and pull you back, but they get swept in as well when they encounter it. The mythicness of the incredible power, epic might. How do you introduce this if you already have a gaming group going on? Well, I had the foresight to suggest that while we try this out, since there's a lot of people that always want to build another character at first level, they're always looking ahead to what we'll be able to do next. This kind of answers it, whether you want to introduce another one. I said we could do this every 6 session, so that doesn't ruin the continuity of our primary campaign, and this one won't get too stale or won't get too far out of our heads when we go back to it and revisit it every so often. So we tried that out and it seemed to work well, but since it's such a good adventure path and such, and people enjoy it, there's more of a voice to introduce it once a month. So, and we have 4 to 5 games a month. They always fall on every week, so every Saturday. So once a month we play it. So that still doesn't derail the other game, and at the same time you kind of keep this fresh as well. So if you're looking to do that, I would suggest throwing this in as like a once of a month if you play every week, or something like that. So it's worked out well for us. I can't really talk too much more about Mythic Adventures because I can only tell you from just the standpoint, just from a monster perspective, and just kind of glancing through the tiers for the different mythic paths and the spells and feats and such. But I mean, you could even go on the D20 SRD, D20 PF SRD website, and you could just look at a couple spells, and you'll see right below it they list the mythic version for that spell. So you can kind of see some of the mythic weights that are put to that, how devastating you can have your characters play out things, and the things that all players always wish that they could do. Just having a little extra reserve of power, being able to do something really cool or awesome. Some of those moments of just where everyone in your group sort of drops their jaw at what someone had fathomed and executed amid their peers. Mythic does that. Once I kind of get more further along in the books with the group, I'll be able to kind of shed more light on that. I currently have all of our sessions through Wrath of the Righteous actually it's being recorded each session. My fellow gamer, Goblin Bait, he has agreed and to record each of the sessions, so you can check out the YouTube channel Goblin Bait, and you can watch those. I also linked them onto my channel, so you can check those out. We're kind of 1/4 of the way through the book, so you'll have to wait quite a bit for us to get up to book 2, where you get to see more of those mythic powers used. But as far as optional resources that you can use for Wrath of the Righteous, I saw on the Paizo forums mythic spells. A third-party publisher put out more optional spells that you can select beyond those that are presented in the Mythic Adventures book. So if those spells are not enough, if you're looking for certain spells, you can certainly go with that option. Mythic Adventures put out a lot of monsters with mythic ranks. So the player characters get mythic tiers, but the monsters get mythic ranks. And there's a lot that were presented, but it doesn't cover all of them. Of course, there's rules on how to make your non-mythic monsters become mythic monsters. But you can also see some third-party publishers are putting out mythic creatures as well. One namely was the one for demons. I think they went through a whole list and made all of them. But as you'll see in Wrath of the Righteous, they throw in a little bit of the mythic monsters and then a little bit of the normal stock non-mythic monsters. And then some people may say, well, why are they just going to throw in just the normal stock? I mean, isn't that going to take away from the mythic characters? No, because they get to fight some, they get experience for that. But they also get a sheer moment of just completely overwhelming the enemy. Sheer elation and joy of just bad assery that can take place. And then even with when they come to mythic monsters, then they get those challenges again, but not like they'll truly ever know whether the creature is mythic right away or not. So there'll always be that tension whether they're about to face something truly powerful, and or if they're just going to face something that they get to have a little bit of fun with as well. So, or a little bit more fun than they would usually have, where they get to just throw out everything they want and kind of set the whole tone for that particular fight. What also is nice about Wrath of the Righteous is they list a lot of the demons in here, such as the demon lords. I think there was a couple that were put out in Bestiary 4, and then you'll see a couple in the back of the Wrath of the Righteous books. I think one for each book. So you get to have, these CR 27s and 25s and such. But yeah, there's a lot of new different types of demons as well. So that's pretty cool. As far as looking ahead, what can you do? What sort of things can you expect from Mythic Adventures? Yeah, there's this city that is kind of almost destroyed, and your characters have to rush to get back up there, and then they get to fight in that, and then gain mythic power and such. But as far as looking at the scope of what happens throughout the subsequent books, what about getting to have a army behind you as you take the fight to the demons? What if you're in charge of a small army? There's that presented using some of the rules featured from Kingmaker with the mass combat rules. You get introduced to that as you start what's known as the Fifth Crusade. Maybe even going so far as to explore the abyss itself, the multitude of layers. So there's a little bit of that. What if your player characters can finally say to others around a game table, yeah, they were the ones responsible for closing the Worldwound, where all the other crusades had failed. So there's that sort of claim to it. There's a lot of other NPCs ahead in the other books that are really done well, and also done well are the rivals to the group, the very iconic big bad guys or gals. Their stories are really good. Some of the different types of races that they chose to use were definitely jaw-dropping. The type of people that you can try to redeem, unlikely and dramatic. You'll find that some of the stories behind what would be perceived as an evil character how could they even come over to the good side, or good people going back over to the evil side? How do you get them back? And there's a lot of different things that are presented where it really gives the player characters that deep reflection, that deep thought to really look and see things as they truly are and make that ultimate decision whether they need to help out this person or sort of group choices as far as what path they'll choose, and kind of test the moral boundaries for good characters as well in the game. So, trying to think, is there anything else to say about this? The maps are great. You got mythic adventures to use. Mythic Realms, which is a Mythic Origins, which is a player companion book, and it introduces some more options for the different paths, and kind of goes into and some things for like Summoner, Inquisitor, trying to think of anything else. Oh yeah, Samurai, Magus, and such. So keep in mind those mythic paths such as the Archmage and Guardian and Champion such. You don't have to be a particular class to get into those paths. So I think that's all I got. The only other thing I could suggest would be the Demon Hunter's Handbook. It's a player companion put out by Paizo for Pathfinder. It sort of gives you like a survival guide where the players get to choose them on some things as far as how to research a demon, equipment kits, certain techniques for battling demons. One that I like was ripping out the heart of a demon. I thought that was pretty cool, and that was for like a barbarian. Dealing with demons as far as bargaining with them, interrogations, ranger traps, some story feats, archetypes. Gives you just some examples of how to know your demon. Some innovations of the Crusades, some insignias, demon hunting organizations. Just a lot of information on the Worldwound and the Abyss. A few spells that are new, as well as magic items. But yeah, there's a lot of optional books that you can use for this. Demons Revisited is a campaign setting book. So you got a lot of different supplements that you can use with this book. Yeah, stay tuned as I get to the other books, as I sort of get into them with the group. I'll make you aware of those, give you more insight. I'll do another video just detailing just mythic adventures, just that book, because it's a huge book and there's some things to go over there which would be outside the scope of the Wrath of the Righteous AP that we're currently discussing. So, hope you gained some good information from this. Feel free to let me know if you have any questions, or I look forward to any of your comments. And until then, see you next time.